Thank you for joining this discussion about helping your clients improve their success rate and helping them weather the storm. Hello, my name is Paul Shrimpling, and for the last 18 years, almost 19 years, I've been helping firms of accountants transform their results by helping them connect better with their team and connect better with their clients around the numbers that you as accountants and bookkeepers are the experts at. Because actually business is all about the people, isn't it? And yes, because we're in the world of accountancy, it's all about the numbers as well. So here's what we're going to cover in this discussion. We're going to talk about weathering the storm. We're going to talk about dealing with the aftermath of that storm. And we're going to talk about preparing for renewal and growth, and then on to and into decisions and actions. So it's my hope that by the time we've finished in 45-50 minutes time, you'll have the crystal clarity around one or two actions that could help you, your team, your firm and your clients very much so in weathering the storm, preparing for renewal and growth by managing and dealing with that aftermath that we're having to deal with now, is it? Or are we still in the storm stage? I think there's a bit of a debate, but I think what's clear is we're heading towards the end of the storm, and the aftermath is going to be a big part of our discussions with our clients and our team and for our respective businesses. So let's start with this issue of weathering the storm. And when the storm hits, it's full-blooded, isn't it? It's wholehearted, it's all-consuming, as you can see as this wave hits the lighthouse. And you know what we've been facing since the early parts of last year is this profound storm that's affected everybody. It's affected every business, your clients and your firm. And the big question is, what do we do to succeed in that world? Or what do we do to survive it? And there's this big question around, is it survival, is it thrive? Well, when the storm hits, it's more of a survival issue, isn't it? So I thought it would be appropriate to share a story from my history that set the scene a little bit in terms of a radical storm that I faced, my business faced at the time. This is pre me working with accountants. I was running a manufacturing business making sofas and chairs, as you can see in this picture. And in 2000, as the recession started to hit in 2000, what you find in the world of interior design, which is the world I lived in, the first thing that people stop buying when recession bites is furniture. Sofas and chairs just stop selling. Now, as a business, we'd been working hard at opening up the London market. We were brilliant around the UK, but we were working hard to open up the London market and committed to a London showroom, actually a Chelsea showroom. And if you've ever been to that part of London, you know and can appreciate the scale of the rents and the cash that's needed to keep a showroom running in Chelsea. And we weren't just in Chelsea, we were in Chelsea Harbour, which is the next level up. So we got a real cash drain from the showroom. Sales had stopped, and we were burning through cash like no tomorrow. And I needed to go to the bank to renegotiate our borrowings. When I got to the bank, they had two words to say to me, and those two words were no way for more borrowing. And actually they then also suggested that because of what I'd put in front of them in terms of preparing management accounts and so forth, they suggested that I call in the receiver. Now, this is a business I started with my father a couple of decades earlier. This is a business that was keeping me and my three children and my wife, our three children, in food, mortgage, and so forth. So it was like staring down the barrel. It was staring down into a deep, dark hole. And the big question is, yes, they said no way. Yes, it was about Dad and I. Yes, I was, I had 18 people that we were working with, and it was me, Kate, my wife, and the three kids, and it was a big deal. It was a big, profound storm in our lives as business owners. And the big question, I guess, and I didn't ask it at the time, but the big question was, where's my accountant whilst this is all going on? And actually they were noticeable by their absence. Now, it didn't occur to me at the time, but since running more businesses, different businesses since then, it occurs to me that shouldn't they been around then when it really mattered? And one question that's come up time and time again with all the work that we've been doing with accountancy firms over recent months is this one, and it's the most obvious rhetorical question I think I've ever asked. Is it better to be isolated or connected? And clearly the answer to that is connected, whether it's connected with our family, as you can see in this picture, or connected with our team, or connected with our clients to ensure that our business continues, our accountancy business, or in my case, the Remarkable Practice business continues. And clearly it's the connection is a big deal. And when I was in that storm that I described to you in 2000, your clients experienced the storm of the pandemic since March of this year and the impact it's had on their businesses. They're weathering a storm a bit, or have weathered a substantial storm. And the big question is, are you there for them? What I'm suggesting is, like, rule one when a storm hits is be there when it matters for your clients. By the way, also be there for your team as well. Now, back in 2000, when I was weathering a different storm, and it was a personal storm, as opposed to now this storm's hitting every business in some way, shape or form, every person in some way, shape or form. So, the scale of what I was experiencing is nothing like what you, your firm and your clients are experiencing now. But my accountant was missing. They were noticeable by the absence. However, when I think about my experience now with my accountancy firm, it prompts me to actually ask them to take a bow. So my accountancy firm they're called Cedar & Co in Derby, and they've been simply brilliant in terms of making regular contact with me and my business partner, my wife, and have been there when it mattered, when we had big decisions to make in recent months in terms of cash flow, borrowings and so on. So please, Neil and his team at Cedar & Co need to take a bow as I say thank you for that. And that contrasts significantly with the way my accountant operated back in 2000, which wasn't Cedar & Co. So in this session, we're going to look for a number of what on the face of it look simple takeaways, because they are. But they're not necessarily easy, and I appreciate there are challenges attached to all of them. But there are challenges that you and your team can work out, and I know this because I've seen other firms, other leaders of accounting firms and their teams resolve the issues and challenges around what we're about to propose. And obviously the first one, as we've already said, is be there when it matters. And can you be there by email? And the answer to that is no, you can't. Well, you sort of can, but does it really connect with your clients? Because if we take a metaphor, for example, first aid, you can't cook and you can't administer first aid by email, can you? You've got to be in the room. Now, ultimately, we haven't been able to be in the room with our clients, mostly since March. So there's got to be another way, hasn't there? And what's evolved is another way. But it's be there when it matters, but be there when it matters eyeball to eyeball, as opposed to by email, as opposed to by using your phone and calling people. Because there's a deeper, more meaningful, more worthwhile connection when you're eyeball to eyeball with clients, one at a time. And why is that so important? Well, it's about the connection, because if the storm's hitting, do they want an email interaction or do they want an eyeball to eyeball connection with you? And I would argue very strongly, and what I've seen from the firms that we're closely working with is the firms that have connected best with their team and connected best with their clients, eyeball to eyeball, using tools like Zoom, like MS Teams and Skype and so on. They're the ones who've been proud of the work they've done and have actually achieved results that have seen their firms grow in the last 12 months, in some cases quite significantly, partly because that eyeball contact with their clients has prompted those clients to rave about how successful, how helpful, how connected that firm is with them as a business owner. And I'm thinking of a small firm out in Essex who's won I think he was telling me that they've won 5 or 6 clients, but 3 of them are like the biggest clients they've ever won, because they've received referrals, recommendations from other clients who've had that eyeball to eyeball contact. So when the storm has hit for them and their clients, they've made their number one priority work get in touch with clients, which I'm sure is what you did at the spring of 2020, and hopefully beyond then as well. Now, what that's done for the firm out in Essex, and what it's almost certainly done for you as well, is put you and your firm at the inner circle of connections with your client. As opposed to being in the blue circle, you'd be in the green circle, the most trusted and valued guides, advisors, supporters of the business. Whereas I would argue the blue team on the outside are probably emailing, as opposed to getting that eyeball-to-eyeball contact. So what happened to me and my upholstery business back in 2000? Well, my accountant was noticeable by his absence. I didn't recognise that at the time, but someone else needs to take a bow, and I hope he's not going to catch into this discussion of this webinar, but Eric, who's my father-in-law, Kate's dad, actually I had a conversation with him about the struggles and difficulties I was having with the business, and Eric took time out from his £100 million engineering company, grabbed his FD and came to see me for half a day and worked through some of the issues we got around cash and borrowings and the profitability of the business and so on. While the storm was properly raging for us at the time, we made a number of decisions, took a series of follow-up actions, and the business survived the 2000-2001 difficulties, and we were able to then grow the business a little and prepare it for sale. So, I had the guidance and advice of a trusted advisor called my father-in-law, and I'm forever grateful for that, and actually Michael, his accountant. So, rule one, be there when it matters, when it really matters, but be there in person rather than thinking, blanket emails work, or even personal emails work well enough. I would argue very strongly, be there when it matters, eyeball to eyeball, and you'll elevate the depth, if I can use elevate and depth in the same sentence, but elevate the depth of the connection between you and your clients. By the way, the same principle applies to your team. So if we're going to be there, what are we going to talk about? Well, talk about what the stuff that you were talking about at the time, which is people and cash. When the storm's raging, it's an adrenaline-fueled decision making, take fast and big action in order to help the business survive. And I'm almost certain you've had lots of those conversations with your clients. So that's the context of the storm. And can you see, it's not just about the numbers, it is about the people. If you just take a step back, it's people and cash first conversations. It's about asking them about those two things, and then you're there when it matters, talking about the stuff that really matters as well when the storm is at its height. Because it's all about the people and it's about the numbers together, not isolated. But if I could persuade you to any path based on my experiences of working with upwards of 45 firms over the last 10, 12 months since March, is that the ones that take more seriously the people work as opposed to the numbers work are the ones that have stepped their business onto a new plane that's enabling them and their firm to survive and thrive better, and also help their clients achieve the same. So that's talking about weathering the storm, which you're almost certainly familiar with because of what you've gone through and your clients have gone through over recent months, certainly since March 2020. Now it's about a different tone. Dealing with the aftermath is different from the height of a storm. And okay, we may well still be in the midst of the storm that the pandemic and Brexit are causing, ultimately resulting in the recessionary figures that the government are telling us, so that we've got this, massive storm. But isn't there a sense that with the vaccines coming and, there's a sense that we may be getting towards the end of the storm and need to start considering the aftermath, which isn't adrenaline fueled. And it's not about taking rushed decisions and rushed actions. It's about being a little bit more measured, but actually is still as, if not more serious than when the storm's hitting, because the consequences of mismanaging the aftermath are significant in terms of the loss of a business, for example, if we take it to its extreme. So your support of your clients in and around this aftermath phase is key, for sure. So it's about you helping them deal with the aftermath. So what is it that we do? What do we say? How do we manage that is the question hopefully the next few minutes will signpost for you. But I want to just reference an preeminent psychologist called Dr. Merritt Wedelsberg. And I read an article that she had published in Harvard Business Review earlier on this year, and which helped me find her book Battle Mind. And it's the subheading that I really like about this book, how to navigate in chaos and perform under pressure, which is exactly where all of your business clients are and where you and your firm is. And she says this about the storm, and how we were communicating and so on. And she said, look, patience with feel-good language like, we need to pull together, or we will get through this, is now close to zero. Those are the right words, the right language, the right tone when we're in the thick of the storm. But as we come to the end of the storm, into the aftermath, the fatigue that everyone is feeling, and everyone is sort of seeking the resilience to deal with, maybe it is the last mile of the storm, but we don't know how long it's going to take us to get to the end of that last mile. Something else is needed. So she suggests the appetite is for specific and actionable communication. It's what to do now so that we can pull together, and it's how to get through it that matters. And the rest of this discussion is very much aimed at specific and actionable communication. Partly it's re-emphasising the fact that we need to be eyeball to eyeball with our customers, with your clients. But in the aftermath, there's a risk that you and your firm will resort back to the emphasis on doing the compliance work, accounts, tax, bookkeeping, payroll, and so on, as the priority work in your firm. But think about this. Your clients have experienced heightened levels of eyeball-to-eyeball contact, or even if it was just phone contact, it's still good contact, just not as good as the eyeball-to-eyeball bit. So if your clients have experienced greater number of contact points than they've ever had before, either by phone or eyeball to eyeball, and in the aftermath you resort back to focusing the vast majority of your time, in your firm's time, on doing the compliance work, accounts, tax, payroll, bookkeeping and so on, then if your client's expectations about the volume of contact is high and you drop it off, they're going to feel maybe disappointed with you and your firm. So my argument is, let's keep the momentum, if you will, around the volume of client contact. But instead of it being an adrenaline fueled, do whatever it takes to get on the phone, get on Zoom and contact and connect with your clients, now it's about you and your team in your firm having a more planned and scheduled approach to the eyeball to eyeball contact with your clients using Zoom, Teams, Skype, whichever is your preferred tool. So what I'm shifting rule one from be there when it matters to be there when it really matters, in person, eyeball to eyeball, repeatedly. And you'll make a decision depending on the grade and ranking of your clients. Those clients who are spending lots of money, you might want eyeball to eyeball every month. Those that spend less, every 2 months. Those that spend less, every 3 months. Now the aftermath is going to have and we don't know yet what rhythm or time frame we're going to have to apply to it. But for you and your firm to be able to balance the contact conversation work, eyeball to eyeball conversation work, and the compliance work, you better plan it in. We better take both seriously. And so diarising this becomes a key component of you successfully helping your clients improve and succeed, as well as weathering the storm, the aftermath, and making the most of the renewal when it comes. So I'm advocating, and this again, it's based on my experiences of working with dozens and dozens of firms over the years, that it's the firms, no it's not, it's the people in the firms that schedule repeating blocks of time for client conversation work that are the ones that balance the workload and deliver the eyeball to eyeball contact that your clients are wanting, maybe expecting now, and really value from you and your firm. And remember, it's got that eyeball to eyeball tone to it. It's not phone calls, it's not emails, it's let's connect deeper, because that face-to-face, eyeball to eyeball piece is more valuable than just the phone. Now, when I find it fascinating that we're in the middle of February and I've had one phone call since the beginning of the year, every other call, whether it be a team member or a client or a supplier, has been a Zoom or Teams call, eyeball to eyeball. And I remember feeling when I had the phone call how disconnected I felt from that person because I couldn't actually eyeball them. Maybe, just maybe, you could and should get yourselves and your team to a place where they're taking that Zoom, Teams, Skype approach to contacting clients more seriously, so that you get the deeper connection and help them deal with the aftermath. And so it's about, yes, being interested. So this is the next step. So we're in the meetings, we're in the Zoom meetings, we're eyeball to eyeball, but what do we say? What do we do? Well, rule 2 is, yes, be in the meetings repeatedly, and yes, be interested, but actually be seriously interested. So this is about dealing with the aftermath, yes, is be seriously interested repeatedly. All right, which is easy to say, isn't it? But what actually does that mean? So yes, we've made the step, we've taken the decision, and we've got actions in place, and we've got repeating appointments with our different grades of clients in our meeting calendar from now till the end of the year, or from now till the end of March, or from now till the end of June, for example. So having those meetings, those Zoom eyeball to eyeball connections, what do we talk about? Well, it is what do we talk about, but it's also how do we manage those discussions well? And so there was this quote by Albert Einstein. Now, by the way, that's not the name of the owl. The reason I wanted to go with a picture of owl rather than a picture of Albert Einstein is because they're known for, or sort of associated with wisdom and knowledge and also curiosity. And Albert Einstein said the important thing is not to stop questioning, not to stop asking. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. So what I'm suggesting here is, yes, set up repeating blocks of time for client work, eyeball to eyeball, for you and everyone who's got client management responsibility in your firm. And in those meetings, be curious. Ask questions that result in a high quality conversation with your client. So that, can you see how that in itself demonstrates that you're seriously interested because you're asking great questions? But still the question is, okay, so I'm in the meetings and I'm asking questions, but I'm asking questions about what? Well, let me tell you a story about James Bond Stockdale. And I find it easy to remember his name because his first names are James Bond, but this is a real guy. So this is the picture of James Bond Stockdale. Now, he was a fighter pilot for the US Navy, as it happens, the planes that take off from the aircraft carriers. And he was the most senior pilot that was shot down in fact, in 1965, the year I was born, over Vietnam, and was captured in a Viet Cong and kept in a Viet Cong prison camp. And he got out when I was 8. So he'd actually been in 7.5 years. He'd been tortured 15, 16 times. They'd broken his leg twice. He'd had a real storm that lasted 7.5 years. And when he got out, and a little bit, I think 12, 18 months after he got out, he was interviewed by a journalist, and the journalist asked him who didn't make it out, which I thought was a fascinating question, but not as fascinating as James Bond Stockdale's answer. He said it was the optimists who didn't make it out. You go, wow! The optimists didn't make it out, so did the pessimists survive? Well, he fine-tunes his answer then and said, when it's tough, you must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which to me sounds like optimism. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose. So actually he's saying you've got to have that certainty in your own head, the belief that you will make it. But you can never afford to lose that. But you can't confuse it with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality. Now, whether you take James Bond Stockdale's words or whether you take the words of Viktor Frankl. Now, Viktor Frankl was interned in a Nazi concentration camp. He was a Jewish psychologist that actually made it out in the end. And he says almost the same thing, is that you need 2 things to survive. And then Jim Collins, who wrote the book Good to Great, and talks about the great companies. These are 11 businesses, 11 companies that outperform the stock exchange by a massive amount, hundreds of % better over the years, and over 15 years on the bounce. and also significantly beat their most close next competitor as well. And Jim Collins actually calls it it's whatever they might be as the end of the conversation from Jim. But what Jim Collins suggested was, and he called it the Stockdale paradox, he says, yes, retain faith that you will prevail in the end as a business, and confront the most brutal facts of your current reality. So can you see is if we're in meetings eyeball to eyeball repeatedly, and we show that when we're in those discussions we're deadly serious because we're asking great questions. We're asking great questions about what is the question, and I would suggest you're asking questions that help your business owner clients face the brutal truths. And also sponsor, if you can, that sense of confidence and certainty and faith that actually will make it in the end. So help your clients. That's too glib, isn't it? Help your clients. Ask your clients in those face-to-face, eyeball-to-eyeball meetings about people themselves, their team, their clients, their profits, sales minus costs, and cash, so that you work your way towards helping them understand what brutal truths they have to face up to. And then we'll be helping them manage or deal with the aftermath in a deep, trusted advisor way that puts you and your firm in the green circle, the inner circle of your clients, because you've been curious and you've asked great questions about the brutal truths, great questions about people, profits and cash, and also great questions about the solutions your clients are seeking. I was in a discussion earlier this week with a leadership team of 5 partners of an accounting firm, and we were having a discussion about where does or how do our clients experience the value of working with us as a firm and as partners and as client managers. And the conversation started very much around it's the services we deliver, whether it be payroll or tax or accountancy or audit or whatever it is. There's a tendency to think all the value is attached to that, when actually there's significant, if not greater value attached to the way your clients feel as a consequence of the conversations they have with you, as a consequence of the questions you ask your clients and your team of client managers ask your clients. And so, as much as I've not mentioned it on the slide here, ask about how they're feeling. And then we're having a deeper conversation. I know that's a bit of a stretch, often considered a stretch for accountants, to ask about the way their clients are feeling. But why wouldn't we, if we truly believe it's better to be connected rather than isolated? Well, there's a deeper connection if we're actually having a conversation about how people are feeling. So here's a quote by Maya Angelou, one of the great authors of our times. And she says, I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. So how will your clients feel if you are there for them? You're repeatedly there for them because you've organised your calendar to have blocks of time for that conversation work with your clients, eyeball to eyeball, and you've asked great questions about people, profits and cash in order to open up a conversation about brutal truths and solutions because you and them together believe you're going to make it through. Then you'll be genuinely helping your clients survive the storm and thrive when renewal comes next. So that's weather the storm, deal with the aftermath. Now we're into prepare for renewal and growth. So far we've got a couple of key takeaways around weather the storm, a couple of key takeaways about dealing with the aftermath. The focus being on both people and numbers. There's sort of a adrenaline fueled focus in when the storm's really biting hard at the peak of the experience. And then there's more of a resilience type approach to deal with the aftermath that's going to go on for months, possibly longer, which is why I think the James Bond Stockdale story that lasted 7.5 years is worth referring to, and maybe even sharing with your clients, and help your clients face up to the brutal truths that will help them survive, help them prepare for growth and renewal as well. So what's that about, helping people prepare for renewal? Well, very simply, it's about extending the conversation that we've already started into planning for tomorrow. Now, right at the beginning of the aftermath, as the storm has ended, and there's an argument it hasn't quite yet ended, so we're at the end of the storm, maybe it's coming, aftermath therefore is going to follow. But at some point you're going to shift one of those repeating appointments, eyeball to eyeball conversations with your clients, from an aftermath tone to a shouldn't we be planning for the future tone. Because it's pretty clear when you look at the economic history books about what happens post-recession is growth. And it's the firms, it's the businesses that prepare for the growth during the aftermath that are set for a high level of success when the growth, the boom comes, which will come at some point. So it suggests in the history books. So can you see how at some point you change the tone of the questions from, or including brutal truths, to preparing and planning for the future and having a conversation and asking about vision and goals? If we do that too early, it can feel a little bit like you just... It's not appropriate, is it? It's incongruent with the times. So that stage is yet to come. However, I find it fascinating that in recent months, since September last year, we've started doing more work with more firms on long-term thinking, strategic type work than the nuts and bolts of running an effective accounting firm. I mean, we're still doing that work, but actually we've got firms going, no, we need to look longer term. So they're already in that space where actually we need to prepare our business for the longer term, not just to deal with the issues and challenges and storm-created issues that we've got now. And at some point that'll be relevant to each and every one of your clients. It's about you judging, whilst you're in those repeated Zoom eyeball-to-eyeball meetings, when to turn your attention, their attention, to asking the right questions about their vision and goals. Because at some point, people are going to start to eye a brighter future, calmer waters, as it shows in this picture. So yes, let's plan for tomorrow, prepare for the future about vision and goals. But hang on a second, there's that other part that I said we're going to cover, decisions and actions. Because it's one thing to ask questions around all the elements we talked about earlier, and this is the final takeaway is let's ask about decisions, actions and accountability. So yes, let's ask about brutal truths. Yes, let's ask about people, profits and cash. Yes, let's ask questions about the solutions that they're seeking. But yes, let's also ask questions about the decisions that are needed that help the business now, but also help the business longer term when the renewal kicks in. And can you see that's the tone around vision and goals? And so it's almost as if you've got a formula around, yes, questions around where they're at and what the problems are. And then you've got questions about deeper understanding about the implications of those problems. So that really digs into the brutal truths, not just now, but the extended impact of those problems and challenges. And then you're into, right, what are the solutions, the things that will help the decisions that will help the business owner improve their business now, but also prepare their business for future growth. And that section of your conversations with your clients is great to have on its own right, but when it's driving towards or helping your client to see a clear decision that needs to be made, from two perspectives. One is the here and now, and the other is later, the future, the vision that they've got for their business. Then those repeated meetings, eyeball to eyeball with your clients, are going to connect at an even deeper level and actually have a more optimistic tone as well, which I'm sure you want to have with your clients, and your clients will at some point want to have with you too. So in essence, what I'm advocating, based on my experiences of working with many firms over many years, but actually the shift that's taken place in the profession towards emphasising the eyeball-to-eyeball contact work, conversation work with clients as being the priority work alongside get the compliance work, accounts, tax, audit, bookkeeping and so on done, because ultimately it is about the people and the numbers, not just about the numbers. It's not just about the accountancy work, it's about the relationship work between you, your team and your clients, because you can't cook or administer first aid by email. It's an eyeball in business, and that's a metaphor clearly. It's a metaphor for getting closer, a stronger connection with your clients, which happens eyeball to eyeball, and it happens even better if it happens repeatedly. It's not just a one-off. But for that to work over time, you've got to plan it in, which is why the blocks of time in your calendar for client conversation work are so crucial. To balance the need for the compliance work, the accounts, tax, audit, and so on work, is both are needed. And that'll put you at the inner circle of your clients because you're asking the right questions. Because, as we said at the beginning, ultimately, it is all about, this business is about people. Accountancy is about people, the people who do the accountancy work in your firm, the people in your firm who are actually having conversations with people called customers, clients. It's about both people and numbers, and what's happened in a lot of the firms that I've seen over the last 8, 10, 12 months is this accountants stepping up to the plate in dealing with the people management stuff, the people leadership stuff with clients and team, and balancing that away from, so it was predominantly client compliance, let's get the work done, let's get the work done, let's get the work done, now let's get the relationship work done. It's high value work, it's just a different type of work. So in summary, we've got weather the storm, deal with the aftermath, and prepare for renewal. And it's about being there when it matters, eyeball to eyeball. Let's talk about people and cash first when the storm's at its highest and it's, your clients are ragged with it. But as the aftermath stage starts to kick in, it's about repeating that eyeball to eyeball contact, scheduling your diaries, blocks of time for blocks of work called Zoom meeting work with clients. And in those discussions, ask great questions. Actually, ask dumb questions about brutal truths around cash, costs, sales. And I've added the words now and then to that line because it's about, as we said earlier, have those conversations. Ask the questions about how it is now, brutal truths now. And what about brutal truths that are going to impact on the long-term renewal of their firm as well? Because until and unless they start to consider that, they're always going to feel as though they're up against it. In terms of, yes, we've had the storm, now we've got the aftermath. Is there not an end to this? Well, at some point, every business has to start thinking about it, making decisions on it, and taking the action. Then we're into the stage, prepare for renewal. So it's about planning for tomorrow, preparing for the future. Ask them about their vision and goals with the view to driving a conversation about decisions, actions, and if you can, elevate it even further to accountability. Because if you've got repeating meetings, repeating eyeball to eyeball meetings with clients, it's reasonable, isn't it, to have captured in the conversations with the clients what decisions they've made, what actions they're committing to doing, and next time you speak to them, eyeball to eyeball, you can ask them how they've done. And that's called accountability. I couldn't leave without going, look, there's 6 things really I'm advocating here that I've seen work in other accounting firms over the years and especially over the last 12 months. And if I could point you in just 2 directions, it would be let's get the words right, be seriously interested repeatedly with your clients. And by the way, the same strategy works with your team that are supporting all the work that you're doing. So be seriously interested repeatedly, blocks of time for blocks of work. Some of those blocks of work are for compliance work. Some of those blocks of work have to be, if we're going to take this really seriously, for client conversations, Zoom meeting work. And then when you're in those meetings, eyeball to eyeball, is hold a conversation that, yes, talks about where they're up to, what problems they've got, the implications of those problems, and the solutions to those problems, with a view to driving or helping your clients take decisions, helping them work out what actions they need to take in order to follow those decisions through. And in maybe the next meeting after that and the next meeting after that, ask them how they're getting on with the commitment they've given to decisions and actions within your previous meetings. And with that in mind, you'll never have any of your clients pose the question I now pose of my accountant back in 2000, which is, where was my accountant when I needed them? If none of your clients ever ask that question because the way you've managed the storm, the aftermath, and the renewal and growth conversations with your clients, this question just won't show up in your client portfolio. And that won't show up because you've been there for them when it really, really mattered. I hope you got some value from this discussion. I hope you can see your way to, and if there was just one thing, is blocks of time for blocks of work. Blocks of work called accounts, tax, payroll, bookkeeping, audit, and so on. Blocks of time for relationship work, eyeball to eyeball meetings with clients so that they feel a deeper connection and you can heart on heart say, I've been there when it mattered for my client, and for that client, and for that client, and for all your clients. It just remains for me to wish you every success throughout 2021 and beyond, and I hope you truly benefit from the renewal that is coming our way at some point in the not too distant future. Wishing you all the best.